having the opportunity to go through this, guys, with you all. This is a new process. It's new to me. It's actually new to all of us in the state of Kentucky. And this is, in fact, the first chance we've kind of had a chance to discuss this as a group. So I'm going to give you a hard copy to walk you through. We'll talk about a number of things. My hope is that we'll reach some common understandings on a series of issues, ask some questions, and figure hopefully a higher level of understanding for all of us by the time we're complete. So this is your paper copy. Sorry, that's your order. Sorry. I need an extra hard copy to go on. Okay. All right. So, first piece of the work in the new system is that there are 7 standards. The board has identified a series of indicators for me to focus on for areas of growth for this school year. Those are the ones you see indicated there in the second slide, and this the standards and the numbers, which doesn't tell you a whole lot, I know. What I want to be able to do is go through each one of these with you, provide some samples of evidence for each. The evidence will not be comprehensive for everything done in the area, but indications of the philosophical approach and some of the tangible pieces that have been done in relation to the area to be addressed. If we look to the next slide, what I've tried to give you for each one is a cutout from the greater document that lists you the standard in blue, and then the indicator, and as well as the rubric that's provided. So, for example, I don't intend to read all this to you all the time, but just so we're all clear, we have a standard here on strategic leadership that talks about creating conditions that result in strategically, this is reimagining, but it was really about implementing the district's vision, mission, and goals, and so forth. We then see, as per direction, that this was to reference standard 1B. And 1B, the indicators, is about modeling and reinforcing the culture and vision of the district by having open discussions with teachers, staff, school executives, and so forth. And then ultimately, there is a 4-point rubric that is again part of this document that gives you descriptors as to what each category would look like, sound like, act like, feel like. Now, anytime we do these things, standards are up for some degree of interpretation, rubrics are up for some degree of interpretation. As this is our first conversation collectively about this, it may be that the evidence I provide, I think, is descriptive of it. It might be that you find that I misinterpreted, and my hope is that we'll be able to have that conversation and come to a different understanding, and more evidence can be provided that may match one way or the other. Or we might find a new understanding for all of us to realize as we go forward. So if we start with this, about strategic leadership, specifically addressing a process that monitors the progress towards the vision, and so forth. I start this from the concept of sustaining and expanding innovation. And here's where you have a relatively simple Venn diagram to represent first the parts of the work that we know to be sustained. Our performance-based assessments continue to occur at the middle school. Our gateways are underway. We've had a chance to score them at our elementaries. The last school is Jennie Rogers, and they should be starting here this week. We were able to do intercession. Spanish for All has taken different shapes, but we continue to focus, and that's what part of our conversations our last board meetings have been, finding the right solutions to make sure that works for everybody. Personalized learning, so that we tailor the instruction. That's everything from the independent studies, the internships, and other opportunities we provide to students. STEAM Academy, we've got lots of cool things coming up for the summer as Experience Danville. The Pathways program, again with the internships and other opportunities for students to experience the world of work and world of careers to make sure that it lines up with their personal desires. Then there's ideas of expansion, which we'll get to in a minute, and then there's pieces in the middle. And the pieces in the middle are those things that are continuations, but simply grow a little larger every time that we work with them. We've been a member of the Next Generation Learning Academy at the University of Kentucky. In fact, our presentation is on Friday. It discusses the framework for innovation. It's a new addition to our innovation book this year. The POE project is a great example of the expansion of our work by taking individualized learning into a theatrical concept, again, more ways for students to show what they know and are able to do. Digital portfolios remain a challenge for us. There is lots of technology out there for us to try and archive the kind of work that students will accumulate over time. We have played with a series of tools from things like Ednoto through Google Classroom, trying to figure out the best ways of logging. We've worked with Jerry Swan on repeated conversations about the tools that he uses and promotes, and we still are fighting through the best ways for it to fit within the Danville school system. Blended learning, we'll talk a little bit more about later. This is the implementation of technology within our instructional program, and we're about to make we've made significant investments and continue to do so, and that will be explained in a later slide. And the EDGE program. which is the one piece of this work I think I am most jealous of. From the standpoint of, I'm insanely jealous as a high school principal, I never thought. And the idea of being able to truly flex the school day in ways to give students learning opportunities and experiences to explore any series of topics, and there's some that are highlighted later, in a much more flexible schedule is, I think, still has the greatest potential for us to capitalize on and continue to distinguish ourselves. As we expand the work, there's been some things this year that have been introduced new. We've been invited to the conversation on convergence. This is an organization in DC that sought out the participation of Danville schools to participate in a national conversation among educators from across the country, intentionally with differing opinions about the look of education in the 21st century. It's flattering to be included. It's important to be part of the conversation. While I'm not sure that the conversation unfolded quite the way that folks we were able to anticipate in doing so, it's something that we will continue to be invited to participate in and continue hopefully to influence. EduCon. This is an education conference run by a school, by the Science Leadership Academy. There's two things that are particularly interesting in this. One, it is a school-led conference, which for us may become a great opportunity for Danville schools to consider running our own conference. We have a number of groups that come and travel and tour through. If we were able to say, this is the opportunity for you to come, it is a week-long presentation, it is in cooperation with a series of partners that I think would be anxious to be involved, it would be a neat way to focus on the work. More importantly, the EduCon conference is at the height of a lot of the technological innovation in education. Their keynote speakers often include the people who created the touchpad, and therefore it's an education setting and talk about what that has been. Obama has been there, Bill Gates has been there, Arne Duncan has been there, and we were able to send folks this year as well. Best conclusion about that whole thing was, we're at least on par, if not ahead of a lot of schools that were at that conference. So many times that there's lots of flash that comes with big city and things and so forth, but in reality, the work here in Danville stands among them all, and stands tall within them. While there, we were able to visit the workshop school. And the workshop school is basically like an unlocked classroom writ large, and so maybe there's different parts of that. There are a series of students who attend the school where essentially all courses and credits are thrown out the window, but a series of standards are implemented, and students are able to progress through them in their own way over a course of years. It allows them to be both part of a group project, which in this one is a hybrid car competition, as well as with individual projects to meet their academic goals. They have been able to push the envelope in ways with high degrees of success, and it was important for us to visit. We have examples here, we need to compare it nationally as well. So we hear about the unlocked classroom like out of evidence, and you'll see later we're about to explore this for Danville High School for next year as well. We've been able to harness conversations and join a larger network around how this plays out. So the unlocked classroom for Danville that we intend to implement next year is aimed at students entering into their senior year who have either met all of their ACT benchmarks or are one benchmark short to join a collaborative project that would run year long. They would come in two ways. They would come in to complete the collaborative project, which has been thrown around right now. The idea is a mobile science lab, converting a bus, and doing all sorts of experiments that would be able to travel in and around. Students would design from start to finish. As well as students would do individual projects, because this course will still need to count for an academic credit in other areas. So if I need a social studies credit, if I need an English credit, if I need a pick your favorite topic of area, the student would have to design a project, demonstrate that to the faculty member and say, here are the standards I need to address, here's the way in which I intend to do it. And so simultaneously, you have a group project that meets a series of standards for a phenomenal experience, as well as an individualized, personalized learning opportunity for them to meet that same opportunity as well. And the high school is ready to go with this for the fall. Following that is I'm in the call. We have been invited, I've been invited to serve on a panel for personalized learning. This is right now it's the leading organization nationally in regards to the level of technological implementation in education. So we'll be excited to participate with that. And the expansion has also come through continued conversations with our principal and professional learning communities and our grade level professional learning communities. Our principals meet every other week. We discuss a series of issues about how we develop the work. And with a series of new principles, which is what we're doing now, we've had to work backwards and forwards. We've got to catch up on institutional history, assess current conditions, at the same point in time trying to push the work in different ways, and you'll see that unfold throughout the presentation too. Grade level professional learning communities is a parallel structure, especially with the idea of consolidating our elementary schools. This is the first time we've intentionally said all fifth grade teachers need to meet together and talk about how to instruct students in fifth grade material. All fourth grade, all third grade, all second, all first, kindergarten. Has been done on a regular basis, creating networks, creating community, and areas for collaboration. Still remember, this indicator is about vision and mission. It's been reinforced. This is just a quick reminder. That's been shared with presentations to our staff and with our community in explicit forums. It comes as we still are meeting as our weekly core team, bi-weekly principals. And then there's been a balanced choice of making sure that there are ways to understand this in greater depth. Mid-year reflective conversations were had with both groups. Well, actually it's BNC, I apologize. So I have continuously sought out feedback and opportunities to better understand our work, whether it was members of the core team or other principals. We have continued to meet both as a group and then on an individual basis, making sure that feedback was reflective and circular in nature. Similarly, I've asked this of you guys. In the fall, I met with all board members individually, and I'm attempting to do so again during this period of time. Again, seeking for your own personal experiences, reflections, and comments, successes, challenges, and things for further development. And then at the bottom in small print, there are lots of conversations that have gone on with lots of people, including staff, either faculty meetings or other conversations with students, whether it's me meeting with students during EDGE or other small groups that I've been able to seek out for different points in time. Parents, which is not just always, there have been invitations to supper clubs, as well as donuts with different groups to discuss the work. Community, whether it's community events, school events, businesses, you see there are special interest groups that should be discussed further. So collectively, this is the evidence that I would present that talks about how, in fact, the vision and mission have been reinforced in Danville schools this year. We'll move to 1C. 1C, same overall standard. Indicator is different. Creates processes to ensure the district identity, being through vision and mission, drives a decision and reflects the culture of the district. Again, 4-point rubric, evidence of statements underneath each one. Then a general ballpark is where things may fall. And I wanted to pick a couple of processes that I believe represent how we carry forward vision and mission in our work. And really there's two that I'd like to share, one, both of which you're familiar with. When it came to planning and accounting, the greatest priority was realized that time is one of our greatest resources in schools. So with our priorities of innovation, whether it be PBATs, gateways, and other explorations of work, what is the best way to arrange 187 days to promote student and staff development? We began with that, had educators talk about what we've always wanted to see in the schedule, that we give the creation of that space and time for intentional work. Prioritizing, you see the planning, the feedback, and the development. We then met as a small committee and thought, how many different ways can we do this? Just because there isn't always the traditional format of picking this day and that time and so forth, could you do it differently? If so, what would happen? With that sketch, we took it to core team, had a conversation, tweaked it again, had some suggestions, had some edits, had some things raised. We then took it to the principals, same conversation. What do you like? What don't you like? What would make you more effective as a school leader? We then took it to our association representation, which had never been consulted before. And this is a way of getting our teacher reps involved because they're the ones ultimately doing the work. And so use of time for them is very important as they need to feel cared for and attended to. Same conversation, tweaks, edits, and adjustments. And ultimately, it then led to a collaborative presentation on the part of the association reps and the principals in their schools. Never before done to show that level of alignment between principals and the association. And we got a full staff vote. And the staff vote for the purpose of the instruction design was a 99% agreement. We take that as a great success. The process was important. The process led to that level of consensus. I think the elementary redesign qualifies as well. We had a difficult fall in making sure that we understood where things fell. Between contract negotiations and architectural agreements and things like that, it required some kickstarting work to be done. And by, I think, January 9th, I gave a plan to the board that said, okay, for the next 8 weeks, here's what we need to do. And in that time, there was intensive participatory discussion. If you remember, we initially talked about doing an advisory, I forget the name of the group now, I'm kind of thankful I forgot the name of the group. But there was a group that had a series of representatives to say who would represent first grade, who would represent this group, and how to make sure it's balanced in schools. And we were able to chuck that entire system in order to have 100% participation of all the groups to be represented. This is when we took our professional development day, stationed Ed and our architects over in the flex room in the high school, and we brought in all the first grade teachers, and all the second grade teachers, and all the well, it wasn't first, excuse me, it wasn't K1, 2 through 5, and then the elective teachers, and the Frisky coordinators, and the counselors, and the instructional coaches, and the principals, all that have an opportunity to say, here's what I think ought to happen to develop our schools. We paired that with an online tool. There was community as well in that part, because we finished that evening with a series of parents that came in. We paired that with a series of online tools. for public bulletin boards, for anyone to put any comments they wanted around what they thought ought to be involved in the schools. And those bulletin boards were even subdivided into a series of categories to make sure that the right people saw that evidence, whether it was related to finance, or technology, or transportation, or instruction, or common spaces. Again, making sure people saw this was a thorough process, inviting everyone to the table. And as we did that, we were able to start shaping out the work. The student involvement has been a key piece too. I'm anxious for our documentary team to be able to come back again with the user groups that come out of the schematic design that we did today, to film the next part of the groups working at this work collaboratively. The important piece to me also is the intentional tour. When we try and interpret vision and mission, tours are not just random. Well, let me phrase it, they can be. Any architecture firm, anybody can say, go visit these 3 schools, 5 schools, 2 schools. And I'm really pleased that the schools that I picked reflected the purpose of the Danville board and the things it was looking for. Getting you guys to Lincoln Elementary was not an accident. Getting you guys to see an outdoor classroom at the Early Learning Center was not an accident, because based upon all of our conversations, that seemed to be lending towards the kind of work and the kind of facility, the kind of opportunity we want to provide to students. At the same point in time, we were able to bring new Vista designs in consultation with High-Tech High. We were able to be part of the architectural charrette. If you talk to many schools around, that's not necessarily a common practice. We often don't get the educators invited up to the architecture firm to throw in their 2 cents and let us play far beyond our levels of expertise. And ultimately, we have the schematic design that you have approved tonight, and we've restored a schedule for this project to continue as originally intended for our bonds to be sold and design with which we are happy. It makes me very pleased to see all of that come together. Soon I'll be needing to lay out the next 8 weeks of work, and I think that's the kind of conversation that you heard tonight. Okay, we got through schematic design. Now how do we start laying out office spaces and classrooms, and what comes after that, and what comes after that? And we make sure that Joy Campbell is monitoring the process and back mapping financials to make sure that we're always intact for our bond sales, because that's the ultimate thrust of the work. And then as a preview, you'll see the same process deployed in regards to our libraries as our innovation centers. When Donna Duchère came and talked about the condition of our libraries and the work involved, this is the next big piece of how our work is to look. And it's going to be in efforts to build collaboration between the Education Foundation, Center College, and the district around the reinvention of our libraries as our intervention centers. They'll be driven by media center specialists, technology resources, teachers, and levels of student interest. Libraries aren't the same as what they used to be anymore. It's not just about going and checking out that copy of Moby Dick and sitting and reading quietly in the corner. Between the implementation of technology, makerspace, and coffee shops, the world has changed around libraries, and we have the opportunity to reinvent our spaces as well. 1G. Facilitates setting concrete to high academic goals for all, effective monitoring protocols, and models the expectations of instructional leaders respond. Okay, so where do we go with that? To me, data-driven decision-making represents this indicator, and we've been able to develop some pretty cool stuff in it. At the far left, you see longitudinal data tracking. This is a custom database we've built here in the Danville schools to be able to show longitudinal data of our students. No longer is it comparing this year's 5th grade class to last year's 5th grade class. And no longer is it taking an individual student saying, this year, here's your level and here's your status. We're now able to say, in 5th grade, Bill read at a proficient level. Well, where was he in 4th grade, and where was he in 3rd grade? And does that trajectory make sense? And then we can extrapolate out from there. What about other kids like Bill? Did they make the same trajectory? What about kids different from Bill? What does their pattern look like? What does their trajectory look like? Up, down, sideways? What interventions do we do with some of these students, and do we see the results from them? What do we do with other ones? And how do we know the things that we're doing is working? And to what extent, and who for? That's the beauty of longitudinal data tracking. And we, for now, for the first time, have that tool available to us. It's led to individual student profiles, which is the real colorful chart on the top right. Anytime we introduce data into conversations, folks get hungry for more. That's the tantalizing part of it. Because as soon as we teach people not just to analyze data, but to ask questions of the data, that's the real development that occurs. Because when you start to ask questions of it, it demands for more. Well, what do we know about this piece? And what does it relate to this assessment? And does that line up with what we did 2 years ago with this different way of measuring? So the individual data profiles is giving us a full comprehensive look of our students from numbers. But as you heard the state of the schools address, parents are also very interested in not just numbers, but also wanting some description as to what these things mean. So whether it's the website that I showed earlier today that begins to lay out in more vernacular terms the kind of assessments that occur, or more importantly, our goal in the elementary schools this year to make sure at the end of the year, every elementary school teacher writes a paragraph about the child that is passed on to the next year. Parents, as you know, get exhausted having to reintroduce their children to the next parent that comes through. And too often, especially in a small district, it feels even more cold and impersonal when that has to be done. So by trying to create a qualitative piece to match the quantitative piece is where the work is going, so that when the teacher receives the child and gets that class over the summer, they should be able to know that student to a degree of detail that hasn't been done before and makes the relationship clear to connect when they walk in the door. The last piece in there is talk about rubrics that begin with the end in mind. And you may not be able to see it, and I apologize for the small print, but this is the updated rubric for this year's gateways. In past, in a gateway, we brought in outside scores, which is always important to do. And scores have had to rate students on any series of categories on a 1 through 4. Again, 4-point rubrics are always the healthiest. You go in an odd number, people tend to go in the middle. But we said, okay, pick a number 1 through 4, and here's a list of simple characteristics to look for, which is still a very difficult process, because whether you see them and agree to what you see them, you're still not really sure until you talk to everybody else whether it's a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So we took that this year and translated it into demonstrable language so that folks who are scoring this could decide, based upon what the student was presenting and based upon the language before them, how well did it match. And in speaking with teachers who were able to use this rubric with their students, and speaking with people who were actually doing the scoring, this process was much more fluid for them because they could more concretely line up, oh, this is what it must look like, this is what it sounds like, therefore this is a better way of determining what the student's level of performance is, and becomes a much better feedback for the student as well as for the teacher, because they're able to see more meaningfully where they were successful and how they can be even better in years to come. The next piece of data-driven decision-making is a cool opportunity available to us. At different times, I'm sure you've heard of SITs, probably not in too highly regarded terms. And this was a major initiative of part of the state of Kentucky in relation to our Race to the Top funding for a one-size-fits-all data management system. And there are pieces of it that have worked well, and there are pieces of it that are still under development. And when it first was announced a number of years ago, there was money set aside for all districts in its implementation. Well, that money still remains in our district. And that tool hasn't quite evolved in all the different pieces that we would like it to do. So we have now been approved to spend those dollars on systems that meet the same purpose of SITs. So you see in front of you two different systems that we're currently debating. One is called Kickboard and one is called Mastery Connect. Kickboard has lots of flash and appeal to it, and Jennifer Medbury has been noted as a champion of change from the White House. And her tool that she and a series of colleagues developed for New Orleans post-Katrina is really an elegant, amazing tool. Mastery Connect similarly does a lot of the same things, and we're still trying to decide what's going to work best for us. Here's why these tools matter, which is the most important thing to you. As we move to standards-based assessment, more clearly identifying for a student in any class or course, here are the 20 standards we wish for you to know and be able to do by the end of the course. We want to measure those things and be able to determine. Too often we give a test, 20 questions, and all the child really knows at the end is that they got a B, or they got an A, or they got a C. What these systems allow us to do is to take all of those tests from start to finish and tag each question with the standard it addresses. And we'll pick on math for this example. So 20 questions that deal with math, and the next test, I pull some of the same skills from the first test and add a few more. Next test builds upon it, builds upon it, builds upon it, and so forth. What these tools allow us to do is for the teacher then to say, I don't want to look just at your overall test grade. I want the system to pull and tell me of all the questions I asked all year long on multiplying fractions, how did the student do? And all of a sudden, it can tell you not just that the student has an overall A in the class or a B in the class or so forth. It can tell you specifically of the 42 questions asked on multiplying fractions, the student has a proficiency rate or an accuracy rate of 92%. They're going to feel pretty good that the student knows that standard by being able to pull across assessments. We haven't had that capacity before. It only exists in new tools coming out. These tools didn't exist, 4 years ago? Because we had to search nationally to try and find something that just now development. And we'll be able to be a pilot, so to speak, or one of the early adopters of trying to move into this level of analysis. So whether it's math, whether it's reading, whether it's science, the whole point is that we keep asking questions about the same standards, as opposed to by hand saying, well, you got it the 4th time, so we'll assume that that's enough. Now we can actually look across the entire span and have a much better assessment of the student's proficiency in any given standard. 2C. Now we're changing standards and changing indicators. Standard 2 talks about supporting and building a system committed to shared values and beliefs focused on teaching and learning where performance gaps are systematically eliminated. So this is definitely one that's dealing with achievement gaps, and we'll approach this from a couple different angles on a number of things. The indicator talks about communicating high expectations for students for student achievement by establishing and sustaining a system that operates through collaborative learning. So what's that look like? I crammed a lot in this slide, I apologize, but there was lots of different things that go on, and I want to be able to have a chance to describe it. So on the top left, you see structured growth opportunities. To me, collaborative learning has a lot to do with professional development and collective growth. There are a few highlighted in red, which I would like to describe in a little greater detail to show how this works. For example, structured growth, around, again, making sure achievement for all. In a mini retreat of the middle school, there was a series of issues identified that the staff wanted to see. They wanted to be better equipped, have greater capacity to address their needs in their school. We took all of those needs, and the central office spent a great deal of time on our own whiteboards and erasers and so forth, trying to figure out are there things that we could do, models we could present, or ways we could organize to help the middle school reach the level of effectiveness that it itself had outlined for us. And we came up with a pretty cool model that did all of those things. And it included how do we make sure that, so for example, in years past, math and science were able to be taught next to each other in a schedule, which allowed for PVAT work to better develop. This year, the schedule didn't allow for that. So how do we restore that piece of it while still maintaining common planning time for teachers by grade? How do we make it so that kids spend more time on team collectively as opposed to being scattered throughout the building while maintaining our elective options and course rotations? These are all the problems that were, challenges that were presented for us to work as a puzzle. We came up with a really nifty design and provided it back to the middle school. And the middle school, appropriately, has taken it and made it their own. So what we decided central office and abstraction has now become through SBDM the middle school model for next year, which achieves a lot of different things. But one of the pieces, again, knowing that this is a standard addressing achievement gap, is that there is an opportunity in the schedule every day for there to be an intervention period, which is identified by students who are below grade level being in small group instruction settings for their areas of need, particularly being reading or math, every day as part of the master schedule. It's achieved by a way of organizing time and staff, a way of organizing electives that gives the teacher's ability to do that sort of intensive instruction with kids from their team that they will know best. In the high school, a similar mini retreat outlined another series of issues. And we know at the high school, one of our greatest focus is that algebra has always been a gateway course, no matter what the standard assessment has been throughout the country. It used to be that was the greatest predictor if you went to college, whether or not you passed algebra 1 in ninth grade. It is the gatekeeper, even now, in a different way, as far as predictors of performance review. So we were able to work with their schedule, and right now, with algebra instruction, high school students are getting math instruction definitely 3 days a week. The fourth day depends on periods of scheduling options, and no more than that. This allows us to move math instruction to no less than 4 days a week and possibly 5 for algebra classes. It's a solid step towards making sure we're getting students the attention they need in instruction. To help make that work, we've been working this with the contract that Yale provide with Leslie Texas Consulting. We've been able to do 6 through 9 math alignment. For the first time in a long time, at least, we've had all of our math teachers sitting at the same table, talking about strategy of instruction, alignment of curriculum, use of resources, technological tools available, and purposeful management of mathematic development to make sure that we are better to make sure that students are getting what they need as they progress through grades 6 through 9. We intend for that to expand, but this was a necessary step to begin. And you see a list of other pieces there too. Principals have been visiting each other's schools. We've had strong investment in world language professional development, getting our Spanish teachers in particular to really study their craft and make sure that we were able to set clear goals as to what we want students to know and be able to do. That wellness program has been a big piece of it. We had almost 200 people out at the 10,000 step walk there this weekend, which was awesome to see. And there's other things there, pathways, progress monitoring, college readiness, and advanced Kentucky. If you need clarification of those, let me know. I'll explain the graphs there in the bottom of that. The standing committees on the other side also show again within this collaborative model that There are lots of groups that meet on a regular basis. I'll talk about the one in red in a minute, but you see that these are all, below that, these are all folks who meet at least once a month, if not more, to make sure that we are intentionally putting people around the table discussing the issues of the district. Student Services is a new committee for us. It was my attempt to put together all of those folks who deal with the non-educational barriers to learning. So whether it was Friskies, school psychologists, pathways, special education, and other network folks to make sure that when we discuss interventions, when we discuss issues with children, that we're tying those resources together. Just because a kid has an IEP, we often have left that conversation up to an art committee and never talked about the other resources available to that student in the district. Just pulled it all together and made sure that we can share those resources because there is an economies of scale when it comes to assisting students in need. So let's talk about those students in need. Not that data is always pretty, but data is data. That's something we need to look at. So the graph at the bottom that says talk about total enrolled students, just to illustrate some of our data. It's important to note that right now, if you walk over to the high school, you would find 125 seniors. Now, we are responsible for more than 125 seniors, students who have been in our school for 100 days and no building so forth. If we just take the kids who are physically in our building, you have to look at this one. If you're a middle-class white student, currently you have an 85% chance of being college ready. Your black counterpart has a 40% chance of being college ready. That's when we talk about achievement gaps of things in which we need to work on, and that is the data we continue to focus. And we hope for that data to change between now and the end of the year. But as of today, that gives you a snapshot as to what some of these things look like, and why some of the data systems I mentioned earlier are so important, to make sure we're able to figure out the rate at which we're finding success through these series of tools that we use. Above that is a system trying to track our interns. We have students that do a series of work in a series of places. It's important for us to know who they are, what they're doing, where they're working, and what it leads to. If you look at the last column, does it lead to quality experience? Does it lead to a summer job, part-time opportunity, full-time employment, or post-secondary enrollment? These are all pieces that add to the data conversation. In our elementary schools alone, these are the initiatives we've been able to bring through to this year. First, data days, where 2 to 3 days are scheduled for each grade level teachers again to dive deeply into the work of their students. Teacher walkthroughs, this is different than principal walkthroughs. That we've taken those days and pulled out a grade level teachers, they've been able to observe each other's classrooms, each other's schools. Grade level meetings I mentioned, principal walkthroughs I mentioned, coaches meeting. I don't know if I mentioned our instructional coaches meet with great regularity for intensive time, trying to make sure that instruction and assessment and measures are used across. It develops the professional learning community conversations that occur back at the schools on a regular basis. There are problem-based and project-based learning emails that come out on a regular basis, and weekly, to help folks think about new ideas and things they can implement in their classroom. And the fifth grade gateways are something that we push. 2F. Driving force behind major initiatives to help students acquire 21st century skills, including application of technology. So, I'm going to take 21st century skills initially as future. The first thing to note is that we are part of, we have a seat at the table at the 3 major innovation conversations in the state of Kentucky. This includes Kentucky Districts Foundation. It includes the UK Center for Innovation and the KSA Next Generation Leading and Learning. We're at all of them. We are, I think, one of 2 districts that are at all of them. In those conversations, we talk about 21st century work. And so it's focusing on the work of Gary Marks, who is remarkably talking about 21 trends for the 21st century. Admittedly, we're going to the 22nd century. I bet it would have been 22 trends, but for the sake of cliche, at least he started with 16 a number of years ago. The last 5 we're still judging on quality. We need to move into issues of standards-based grading. It is one thing to get a paper back and say, oh, kid got an A, kid got a B. What that actually means is a whole different conversation, which harkens back to my conversation about Master Connect as well as Kickable. The idea of saying that this piece of writing should represent a series of standards. It might be everything from issues of grammar to issues of transition, writing style, to the appropriateness of the writing, and paying attention to the audience, to recognize the author's purpose, and so forth. And the standards-based grading is going to give parents a lot more information, as well as the student and the staff, what the student actually knows and is able to do. EduCon has been part of those conversations too, so you see that the Fund for Transforming Education, even though that they were frustrating at times in the way in which they had chosen to use their pot of money for grants, remains at the table and still seeks to see our input. And in fact, the District of Innovation retreat earlier last week, they remain interested in being much more honest about the kind of proposals they would like to see in the work that they're looking to fund. One of those things that we might be willing to pursue with them is the art of digital badging, which you see over on the right. Digital badging gets back to a potential version of the digital portfolio. And it's going to sound pretty corny at first, and I apologize for that, but it is. Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts are very good at badging. You accomplish a task, you get they call it the patches, right? You get a patch. This is the digital version of that. So if we take our Danville diploma skills, and right now, and there'll be other slides on it, right now we do all of them every year. And in doing so, folks kind of waver in which one gets levels of attention and so forth. We may be able to hone in and focus on specific ones each year, possibly at different grade levels, where a student is able to earn a digital badge for demonstrating proficiency in that skill. That badge, like in Cub Scouts, will then stay with you all the way through your years of Danville High School, so that as you graduate with your Danville diploma, you will also have a collection of digital badges representing those Danville diploma skills. The cool thing is we can design them ourselves. We can design badges far beyond, so if a teacher is interested in a special project that they feel is worthy of something, we'll be able to tag that to it. It can be added, and it is something that we would have complete control over. This is something that's it's getting a lot of popularity in Europe. It's hit a couple cities here in the country. It would be new for a number of us to play with, but while the conversation about archiving the information is slow, this is something we can quickly get into to at least make sure that the work is moving forward. So when we talk about 21st century, that's also about, to me, bringing the world to Danville schools. Tom Vander Ark has been one of our greatest fans, and it's great that he continues to cite our work here in Danville. We need to continue to feed him with cool stuff to write about. It was exciting with Dr. Coleman and Gene Wilhoit at the University of Kentucky chose to bring Waukesha County from Wisconsin, as well as the ACT here at Danville. They could have chosen any backdrop they wanted to in the state of Kentucky, from K through 12 and post-secondary, and wanted that conversation here at Danville to represent the work that they were discussing. We were able to bring an Ebola doctor, the Ebola doctor, Times Man of the Year, to Danville schools. It was a pretty cool opportunity to have this FaceTime chat. And we're about to do it again. Sally Solomon has written a book called Disgruntled. Listen to NPR, she's right now one of the hottest new authors on the scene. Sally's book is somewhat self-autobiographical of a black girl raised by African nationals, but sent to essentially a white middle class and upper middle class school. And it's about her trying to sort her life off into four of us. Through one of our focus groups is leaders from within our African American community. And I've asked for a few of them to take copies of the book, as well as a couple of Danville staff, and read it. And their goal is to be able to run a book club with a number of our junior and senior girls from Danville High School around this book, Disgruntled, from Sally Solomon. And Sally has tentatively agreed to do a chat with those girls online. In fact, Sally's mother will also be part of the conversation. So we get the multi-generational approach to these issues that in fact transcend any border boundaries. So it's going to be great. The bulletin list there too shows some of the other things that we're bringing to the schools. Digital badging, I mentioned step-based grading. I mentioned the Unlocked Classroom earlier. The 8-to-1 student device ratio is what we're pursuing for grades 3 through 5. We've made major investments in programs like Lexia and Dreambox at the grades. We have not been able to implement those programs to the design and specifications of the companies that say in order for this to work, you must spend X amount of time with X amount of regularity. To do that then, we're going to do a blended learning model. And we will put 8 devices in every elementary classroom grades 3 through 5. By putting 8 devices in those classrooms, it becomes a learning station. This allows the teacher to work personally with a small group of students, while other students are working through the technology-based programs via Lexia or Dreambox with the regularity required, so that we can figure out the level of impact these programs have on our student achievement, while still giving the teacher more individualized time with students about their individual learning needs. Edge Convocation Program. We've been doing Edge now for a number of years. We are able now to convert that experience into actual high school credit. So this will incentivize more offerings, it will incentivize greater participation, and allow for students to earn credits in their high school experience through alternative opportunities that isn't just about sitting through math class. Back in the Danville diploma skills I mentioned. With our fee waiver reformation this year and our plans for next year, if you remember this year, we had to work on funding formula and provide schools with lump sums to make sure that we were fair to all. We're in position now for the fall of 2015 and 16 to essentially double the funds we provide our schools for fee waiver students. This will allow for the same opportunities that students get now to be continued as well as expanded. That's ultimately the goal. We want for all students to have those opportunities. And this is important as we continue to work in the 21st century's education. Similar to that, we've also been talking about some new strategies for funding educational experiences, and we'll work with schools as they see fit, be it SBDMs or PTSAs, or school staffs to make sure they're well aware of the different things that match. But the district is making a significant investment to make sure it's fair. 3. Cultural leadership. New standard, new indicator. In blue, you see the standard. Superintendent understands and acts on the important role of systems culture. Has an exemplary performance of all schools and works to understand the people in the district and community. The indicator builds community understanding of what is necessary for all students to graduate college and career ready and be successful in the 21st century. These are examples of some of the community engagement opportunities I've had to be able to share our goals and our mission and purpose, and the Impact CCL. The State of the Schools was a big event, at least as far as the format. Attendance wasn't what I wanted it to be, but at least importantly, put that opportunity out for every member of the Danville community to participate. I've had the opportunity of discussing our work with the Rotary Club on a number of opportunities. Advanced Kentucky continues in their work with our AP programs. Although this is the last year for it, we're in position now to take its success and figure out how we sustain its work in years to come. Kentucky School for the Deaf is opening new career pathways and inviting the Danville schools to participate. This gives us more opportunities to get more students career ready. Currently at Danville High School, we have 27. 3 of those are true career ready tracks. 24 is through a COSA marketing track. This will allow us more true career track programs and a much greater accessible opportunity for our students. Unfortunately, it's been a struggle getting our kids to take advantage of Lincoln and Garrett and Mercer's tech centers. Bringing it a little closer to home is going to be a nice opportunity. Let's see what's under there. The Advocate Messenger is giving us space to publish to create student authors. They have a full page available potentially once or twice a month that we intend to share with other districts to be able to put our students' journalism class into a real-world class application where our students will be writing content for the paper. They will be able to submit their resumes to college with actual publications. We continue to expand our work with BCTC, making sure that dual credit opportunities are available. And Farmers National Bank is interested in reinventing its investment in the Danville schools, particularly around digital innovation. Those conversations are early. We are still in those conversations. I put it up here because we're 8 months into my tenure, but I feel it's important just to note that they are looking to see new fruit towards the work and not just being about buying a battery and outfield, which they intend to, I think, continue. And same with Center College. There are lots of relationships that we have pursued with them, and their investment in the Danville schools has raised dramatically. Sending us edge speakers, whether it's about setting up classes to be our research arm of our district. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Even talking about some of our services for our students who will be low-income first-generation students in college and marrying them with programs like the Grissom Scholars, Honor Scholars, and some of the other programs that Center has set forth. In bullet form, you see the different pieces. Again, we now have relations with 3 tech centers primarily. Service learning opportunities exist K through 12. Dual credit, AP programs, Project Lead the Way is 6 through 12, and engineering is elementary at the K through 5. We're able to invite guest scores for gateways and PVATs. We're able to link our students to the community through pathways programs. We have intercession opportunities that you've seen when we take our kids all around the country, especially Florida. Independent study opportunities, edge presentations, at the elementary, the discovery days, career days, and even the preschool parent days. These are all opportunities that I've been able to be engaged with to make sure that the message of Danville schools continues to permeate a series of audiences at lots of different corners of our district. 3D, same standard, new indicator. Builds trust and promotes a sense of well-being between all stakeholders. I've mentioned a number of different focus groups, conversations, and chats that I've had. And if you'd like definitions about these different groups or even I'd be happy to describe. But all these groups have met multiple times. This is not just a one-shot deal or a drive-by conversation. And they continue. Even this week, there's more folks on the list as we continue to expand our network. The printed word is also a way of building relationships. I take great pride in some of the emails that I send to staff because it gives me an opportunity to discuss a series of issues that often aren't commonplace or easy vernacular. So whether it's the opening of school, issues of Ferguson, the murder of Muslim Americans, holiday anxiety that affects many of our students and staff, bus incidents, and so forth. It gives me a chance to communicate. I just wanted to share some of it. And I send these emails out, and what's neat for me is that every time I send one, there's no need for a response, it doesn't call for a response. But individuals feel compelled to respond, which is really a cool thing to see. And rarely is it the same person twice. I want to share some of the quotes. These are simple statements. And folks seem to enjoy the different pieces of it. Some folks get my jokes, other folks don't. It seems to be a fair trade. Different people get different jokes. I think that's the most important part. Then you get the long list. It takes a lot for someone to sit and write this kind of response, especially when it's unsolicited. Whether it's about truly touching a nerve that seems to be particularly personal for them, or whether it's about a new teacher coming to the district and feeling immediately welcome because of the sentiment expressed, or even some of our veterans who have to harken back to their early days and remember what it was like so as to better care for those around them. Moving along. These are very kind words, and I'm very honored that someone would share bestowed them upon me for taking time to describe situations, possibly in language or in opportunities that aren't commonly used to represent the work that we do. Then there are relationships in the modern era. And relationships in the modern era are much more of an online environment. So since COVID, and part of that was hiring our communications firm, which I think was an important decision for the district. And since we've brought on Caldwell Communications, we gained one new Facebook follower a day and showed 10% growth in our Twitter followership. And you see those things circled. So in Twitter, we've got over 819 followers now. On the Facebook, you see the numbers circled. We have 1,500 followers on the Facebook. And we'll see some different statistics and data from this from there. But those relationships also mean in multiple languages. So the other red circle, you notice that we're now able to convert our important crisis messages, whether it's about weather or emergencies, in Spanish. So many of our families, I remember being at Hogshead on one of the days in which we had a situation, and a family pulled up wanting to know what was going on in the school, didn't speak English, would have had no idea other than cook, and just knew that there was something wrong. So when we were able to do this, we were going to address a much greater swath of our community in ways that's much more meaningful and sensitive. 3, routinely celebrates and acknowledges district successes. This is done in a number of ways. First, you see that tonight. Our board recognitions have expanded in ways that we're now able to take our photographs, and when we take these pictures, we do a couple things with them. We send a copy, and first there's a certificate in the folder, which is just a nice representation of the work. And then the photograph goes to the family, and it goes to the school. It is a way for them to have an archived opportunity to see their students' work and the achievements they've been recognized by others. There was, in fact, a separate instance in which there was an innovation radio show that was able to feature Bate Middle School. And Beth Lee was able to do a fantastic job in her interview describing the work that was done, converting some mentioned earlier. With the Council for Opportunity of Education, I was able to stand alongside a U.S. Secretary of Education to describe Danville's work in that context with the two of us on stage. The idea of describing all means all. The fact that we are a very different district than we were many years ago. Our population has changed, but we're making to make sure that all students are important in all ways possible. And on the right, you see a different way of recognizing the accomplishments. We've had over 1,000 tweets, 187 school days. That's roughly 5 different messages a day that comes out of the Danville schools. And if you look at the small statistics there, you see the ones that we're even able to track to see which ones are reaching the right kinds of people, which helps us make more messages that continue to hit those audiences. So when you look at posts with the highest level of engagement, you look at the recognition of MK even more. If you look at the posts with the highest reach, school day delays. By paying attention to what folks respond most to helps guide our work to determine how our messages can best get out in the ones that follow. On the next page. If you haven't had a chance to check our Twitter or Facebook feeds, these are just a sample of the kinds of images that go out. It is often a picture, we're moving into video, short video, that again celebrates the work. It also means there's great more pressure on us to make sure we have our photo and video release forms up to date, because we want to have every student recognized for their achievement, and staff as well, for what they're able to do when they've been involved. This is part of those 1,100 messages that have been going out. This is what's in development, and we expect this to be in the mail by the end of the school year. It is essentially a school-by-school celebration of the school's involvement in innovation. This is in draft. This is very draft form, but it's moving quickly as we're starting to revise text. What you see is a cover page, and then you see a definition and description of district innovation, and then a celebration of the Danville diploma students. That is followed by what will be full school pages, full color, pictures as well. They give a description of the work of the school, how they're invested in innovation, and then the honors from this year. I've had all of my principals send me every possible recognition, award, or celebration they've had from the school year. We will be able to pick from those and include as many as possible to, again, do direct mail into every Danville residence and business to make sure they know the work of the Danville schools, for all 5 schools particularly, and around innovation. This work is forthcoming and will be out this school year. This is going to be new. Sometimes celebrations and accomplishments are not just about kids, it's about staff. And we'll be doing an end-of-year staff assembly and celebration, where each school, publicly in front of all Danville staff members, will be able to celebrate and recognize their certified staff member of the year, their classified staff member of the year, their rookie of the year, this will be someone in the building who has 0 to 3 years of experience, and their People's Choice Award, the person that the staff feels is most deserving of recognition. And we'll be doing parallel work at the district similar. So look for that to be after the school year is closed in those last planning days, and we hope that the board will be able to attend. 3F, supports and engages in the positive cultural traditions of the community. This is a sampling of some of the places I have been and things I've been involved in. Leadership Lowell County just acknowledged 3 of our Danville High School students for their involvement. The best thing about that conversation was that there is a mutual agreement on the part of the Chamber of Commerce, the specific leadership of Lowell County, and the district to make sure that we are much better represented in the next cohort to come. They rotate every 2 years, and we will be hustling from here on out to make sure that we get a whole lot more students involved in it. I have been able to address the Kentucky Family Resource and Youth Service Centers communities twice this year, been invited to speak to them. The migrant population and staff has also been new on my list of folks to be able to include and discuss as we develop right now. Pretty cool summer program. It's being a little different than what we've done in the past. There have been conversations about how to make Danville as a city more inclusive for special education students. Rotary I had mentioned. You see the picture there for the Martin Luther King Day March, which was a great event. I was able to attend the Fairness Dinner, which is a celebration between Fairness Campaign and ACLU. That was a major accomplishment for the city of Danville. I thought it was important that we were represented at that. Juneteenth, y'all familiar with Juneteenth? It is the date that the last group of African Americans who were enslaved were notified that they were then free. June 19th is traditionally the date. It's Ralph Ellison's second novel that was published after his death. There is a Juneteenth celebration for the first time here in Danville. I've been asked to speak at that event to make sure that the public education system and Danville schools are represented in the conversation and celebration of that. On the bottom right, there is a Department of Juvenile Justice. There is serious consideration of expanding a new model of juvenile justice today by one of our Danville alums. From the juvenile justice side, it's a huge cost-saving measure, and what it is an expansion of what we would traditionally assume to be youth service center work to get involved in students' lives before it gets to a crisis point, before the justice system has to take over. They've realized it's to their financial benefit to create staffing positions that exist in and around students proactively versus the cost of having to wait for them to hit the court systems and what comes from that. So we're still in conversation about getting all those details together, but we hope for that to be up and running for the fall. Then there's the more personal things. Whether it's Dancing with the Danville Stars as a menu, getting to read to the second grade students, or attending the choirs, or speaking at Career Day about leadership, or being at the superintendent cup, or being able to acknowledge our kindergarten art champion, or even donating a pie to the light. Those have all been part of the ways in which I've worked to be involved in the traditions and cultural events here in the Danville district within the last 8 months. This isn't really part of it, but I'd like to throw you the fact that we're actually looking at creating some new traditions. Part of the Blue Blood conversation has been about trying to restore some energy and vigor into the relationships between and among current students and alumni. It's also about, at the same point in time, trying to take away maybe a little bit of the venom of some of the rivalry to make sure that it's left to the students and issues of fun between us and Lowell County. So I've talked to Michael Favors, and this summer we'll be putting together a team of people, students in particular from both sides, to discuss creating a challenge week. So that right now, when it leads up to the football game, there's usually soccer, there's volleyball, and what we want to do is add a whole bunch of other events. Movie trivia, chess, three-legged race, come up with as many events as we can, charity event, fundraising opportunities. Have every event worth a certain number of points, so that the ultimate winner of the challenge week is not settled on the football field or on the volleyball field or at the soccer pitch, but over a collective series of points and events that could be awarded at halftime to the district. And maybe it's the golden trumpet as the trophy. That's like, think about the old keg and nails and the tournaments that exist from here. We're looking to create a full festival and to make it student-driven, student-led, and try and engage students maybe that have never been part of this conversation at all. Again, you throw movie trivia out there, we should have an Xbox tournament, we should be able to do all those different things, put points to them, let the students engage to them, and have it become part of it. This is something we'll be discussing in the future. Similarly, is the idea of doing a block party at Danville High School. The stretch of asphalt in front of Danville High School is begging for a block party between alumni and current students. Maybe there still would be a bonfire in the back, that I'm not so sure about. We'll have to call a fire department. But that stretch of land is perfect for essentially street festival. And we'd like to see how we can get alumni possibly take lead in the development of that, whether it be music, vendor fairs, and other sorts of activities for all ages to engage in community life. Standard 6. Collaborative leadership. Superintendent, in concert with local board of ed, design structures and processes that result in broad communication, support for, and ownership of the district vision. This indicator develops collaborative partnerships with the greater community to support the 21st century learning priorities of the school and district and schools. These are, the definition of partner is tricky for me. Quite honestly, I think people use it too flippantly. As Ralph Fitzpatrick defined partnership, it's truly when 2 + 2 can equal 5. Short of that, most of our connections are either contractor vendor or some level of relationship. I'm not yet sure where each of these stand, but they're all in the ballpark of trying to get that development going. We've reinvested in our co-ops. We have maintained our relationship with the New York Performance Standards Consortium out of New York. From McDowell's has worked with us both still with children's services, as well as even helping to consult with some of our marketing firms. The Center for Innovation, we remain solidly linked to their work, both through the national Next Generation Learning, as well as some other opportunities which I'll discuss here in a minute. Center College, again, is doing some of our research work, which is different, and I think in our May work session, those students will be coming and present their findings of the analysis of our data. Teaching Kentucky and Asbury College are on our list to help diversify our teaching staff, trying to figure out new ways of attracting talent to the Danville community. Council for Opportunity Education continues to want to seek for new places for a college-going curriculum that would be perfect for our EDGE and advisory programs. I will be likely traveling to see them this month to help refine that work. ETS is one of the greatest research and testing institutions in the country. They closely partners to help us keep us on top of what is going on and where we position ourselves, both from performance-based and beyond. Ina Call, I mentioned earlier, is being attracted to be a panelist for them. AmeriCorps, I'm going to touch on in just a second because it ties into JAG. JAG on your page is a little lower. I moved it up for this conversation. It's Jobs for America's Graduates, and they have a JKG chapter called Jobs for Kentucky's Graduates. And they've been looking at another high school. And the goal is to work with, in particular, students that we think will go to college, but it's not necessarily a guarantee. And we want to make sure there's every opportunity there. And so Larry Caruso, who's formerly at General Electric, and I've been in conversations for a while, and literally a couple hours ago, I got an email saying he has secured $30,000 to be able to open up a chapter here in Danville schools. Now, it's not an ink. I'm not sure if emails count as ink. I'm not sure what that involves. But if, in fact, it is in the realm of grants, we have the opportunity to potentially turn that 30 into 60 through our Gates Foundation that we've still been looking for ways to be able to find matching funds for. So my hope is that by the May board meeting, I get to tell you that I've turned $30,000 into $60,000. But at the very least, it'll be fun to tell you that I've got 34 students needing intensive attention. This becomes a tremendous support to our Pathways program, becomes tremendous support with our juvenile justice efforts, becomes tremendous support with our friskies, and allows us to potentially even have the funds to bring in the VISTA chapter that we hope to apply for, which gives us a lot more labor towards a lot of these projects and making sure students are getting the individualized attention we want them to have across the spectrum of students here in the Danville district. There are collaborative partnerships for community. By working with leaders from the African American community, we are developing, it's in early stages of a campaign that we'd like to convene for next year, of what does it mean to be a good education parent. We often talk about parents and their involvement, but rarely does anyone teach parents what it means to be a good education parent. What does it look like when the student comes home from school? Is there space set aside for homework? How are chores scheduled into a day? What other responsibilities must a student attend to but still be able to reserve education as a priority? Do families understand the time must be invested at home in order to make sure what that looks like, in order to make sure that translates into the performance at schools? This is what the project is that we'll be working with some of our folks are working with Sally Solomon's Disgruntled. This will be another part of our project as well. And then there are collaborative partnerships for leadership. We'll start with school and district leadership. We have significantly ramped up the rigor by which we select our principals. The line of questioning, the style of investigation, the challenges that we put to our candidates is going to yield a much greater result in quality. I think we've seen success once, and I think with Tolliver we'll see success again. Even so much so that with the Tolliver group, we are seriously considering conducting a mock interview to make sure that as interviewees we're developing our skills to have those conversations at levels of depth. We put candidates into role-play situations. We make them simulate the work. Performance-based assessment is not just for students, it's for adults as well. Tied to that, we have a very new leadership team with new principals, new central office folks. We're looking to contract with Dave Sharon for applied positive psychology. There are likely other districts that are going to go in with us on this because they too see the same need for leadership development in schools. This isn't just education development, this is true executive leadership training. Knowing who you are, knowing what the emotional and the social responses will be, and how best to facilitate that work. And I, along with central office staff and some of our district leadership, school leadership, will be participating in student leadership. I mentioned the leadership role kind of in the Chamber of Commerce. You've seen the conversations as well, and I'll lead you. We keep looking for, especially as we consider consolidation, what might be some organizing principles or organizing systems by which we continue to focus the development of our youth. And then there's teacher leadership. Within the Experience Danville this year, we're for the first time creating a position for essentially a leader in training. We've got to create opportunities for teachers who are considering moving into leadership positions to get some experience. So essentially we're taking a teacher and making them principal of the Danville STEAM Academy and giving them that hands-on work, working for budgets and staffing and monitoring the work. We've also been able to take the anchor group of past and roll it over into our national board certification. We have a cohort of teachers that are now pursuing their national board certification. Honestly, there is no higher honor as a teacher credential earner. I think we've got between 5 and 6. We recently just had a speaker come in to help work with their writing. It was a group that we pulled in about 25 people, most of which, that's not true, 6 of which were from Danville. Most of those were going through the process. Others were still exploring the process. They came to professional development, realizing this was an opportunity to get a better understanding of how the system will work. The Kentucky Teacher Network is what you see beneath it. It's the work that we've been able to maintain a relationship with, thanks to a couple folks. One is Suzanne Farmer, who's moved from Tolliver to that opportunity, as well as Cindy Parker, who is a Danville resident who attended Hawks as a student, and has made sure we have stayed connected. Because this is, in fact, the next foray in education. Too often, if a teacher is really, really good, the reward is to take them away from students. And that can't continue. Teacher leadership networks now, especially our national board and so forth, how are we able to capture what that individual may have to offer their colleagues without having to remove them entirely from the classroom? Trying to figure out the right model of doing so is tough. I will be approaching the Appalachian Regional Educational Laboratory about some new ideas on how we might be able to model that in some higher education institutions and partnerships. But ultimately, this triangle of collaborative partnerships for leadership is another part of that development. So I'll leave you with this. I don't know if y'all remember, but the speaker at KSDA on the second day made the statement that the big fish are in the rough water. And there's no doubt that in the Danville schools, we're tackling the rough water. It's hard work. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's unpleasant. Sometimes we all get a little nauseous. But the reward is great. And there's some tough spots, but there's always that pride and joy when we know things work. So honestly, it's a good thing that we're at this, because it's not just what we do, it's in fact who we are. So I appreciate it.
So, does anybody have any questions? I think there will be opportunities between now and moving ahead to talk more about this, or if you're able to look through this and you have questions. But anything now? Okay. Keith, we thank you for putting all this together for us and taking us through it, and we'll be looking at it closely and probably be in touch with follow-up. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent evaluation process. There is, since Monday night's work session, there's been some revision made to the 360-degree survey logistic information that I've was able to send out to all the board members over the weekend. So I guess if we could have a motion just to accept the 360 survey questions and the logistics list. This lists 3 things, but there really are 2 documents. There's questions that I sent to you guys, and then there's that background piece. So it would just be good as part of this process to be able to show that the board accepted all that information. The attachments have been sent to Greg. They weren't uploaded as part of the meeting attachments, but they will be there for people who go back and look at this. And it's all the same information as what was sent out to the board and also shared with Keith over the weekend. So, is there a motion?
I'll make the motion that we accept the 360 survey and the logistical. Let's do it.
That's fine. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to say that I appreciate the efforts to make sure that I feel better about it now that I feel it's more transparent. And that we were given, as board members, given a much more opportunity to take a look at the things that are being presented, things that are being asked for. Some of the revisions that were made, I think some of the suggestions that were made was the unsure part. Also, some area for comment if someone wants to make that. And so I think that's an important part of it. And so I think things are looking really good on that. I feel really good about the 360 survey. I was never against the survey. I just wanted to make sure that everybody had a clear understanding on how it was all going to work. Right? So thank you very much.
Good. All right. Any questions? All right, so a motion and a second to accept the 360 survey and the logistics, the background document that goes with it that explains how it will be administered and what will happen with it. All in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion's accepted. The next item is executive session. We will not be having an executive session tonight. Right. So the next item will just be to adjourn our meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
So we have a motion second to adjourn. So all in favor, say aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.